It's the early 2020s and the new live service gacha game Blue Archive is gearing for release. They drop a first teaser inviting us to a wondrous blue saturated world calling gamers with vibes and surreal tunes. Their promise? A militaristic fantasy story of youth. It's to be the story of the miracles you create with your students. And what's a teaser if not an indication of things to come? You'd expect the characters that are teased in a promotional video to eventually become playable, yeah? And most of them did. The majority of the characters we got a glimpse of in the first stylish slideshow got their release relatively quickly, like the poster girls of the Abydos Foreclosure Task Force, or the RGB Skip the Bee Game Development Department. But not everyone was fortunate enough to get a quick release from NPC jail. Yes, for 5 years and 3 months, one student for some crime unspecified has always failed the jailbreak. That student was Erika. But John believes in forgiveness. John is a merciful developer who believes in no student left behind. So here we are in 2026 finally welcoming her to the playable roster. And who is Erika? If you came across the OG promotional video first, she is the silver-haired girl sitting chatting with a friend in a classroom, basking in the afternoon sun. You know nothing about her other than that she looks a bit dangerous. Nothing good has ever come from associating with a girl who ties overwear around her waist. Or maybe your first encounter was via the music video Target for Love. You'd probably remember the scene where Iroha and Ibuki are doing some innocent tank cruising when they're rudely cut off into an emergency brake. What happened? Gehenna happened. Erika and Kirara recklessly dashed past, probably violating whatever few traffic laws Gehenna has. Personally, I find this to be one of the best vibe-setting moments of my introduction to Blue Archive. It's a vibrant call to suspend your disbelief. Like, look pal, these are schoolgirls dangling incendiary grenades just casually running past tanks. Your common sense? You can leave that at the door. This is a world ruled by nonsense. So how about after we actually got into game? What became of Erika? Story-wise, like the Target for Love PV, her presence is generally the passing by kind. So far, she hasn't played an extremely prominent role in the main story. Erika and Kirara are the only members of the Kira Kira Club, a rebranded version of the unofficial Go Home Club. We occasionally see them being an active part of the background, like interacting with Ms. Hina as she juggles piano practice and managing the disciplinary affairs of Gehenna. The biggest part they've had to play was driving the action of the rowdy and cheery Gehenna field trip event to Hyakiyako. You would think that would be the natural place to release them, but neither she nor her partner in crime made it to release on the original run. Kirara would get a release a few months after the event, and Erika would be sent back to what felt like indefinite solitary confinement in NPC jail. Fast forward most of 2 years, and we would see a bit of her again in the opening act of Main Story Part 2. I wouldn't mind them getting a bigger role in the main story like in a potential Gehenna volume. They're not exactly my favorite club, but it would be very Blue Archive to have unassuming characters thrust into big events, like the Makeup Club becoming key characters in the Eden Treaty arc, Faust being the exception as a born killer. And finally, it was Erika's turn for a relatively unceremonious release paired with the immortalization of the Rowdy and Cheery event. But how actually was her release? Erika was a playable closed beta character, so that added to the confusion of why it took so long to release her. The art hasn't changed much, though I'm obligated to point out they did upgrade the power level of her socks. Very important. And unlike a certain fox who took a long time breaking her silence, she's had her voice even back since beta. Though, I gotta say, her voice was not what I was expecting. We've all got our headcanons, and I was expecting something more One-san cool? But it's cool in a more chirpy way. Not that it's a bad thing, her voice is unique in its own right, and I feel like she'll grow on me with time. Pretty much all the lines were redone, but one thing stayed constant. That is, an obsession with leopard print. They've really tripled down on that, adding various lines about the gold and spots. That includes this line about the many other things in leopard print that she owns. I imagine she means a leopard print blanket, or maybe leopard print curtains? And of course, playable means using her in battle. The thing is, Erika was actually playable back in the closed beta of Blue Archive, the olden times of Moe XCOM. But now they've decided to promote, demote, her to a special student. So you won't be getting any opportunities for her to frolic the front lines with Kirara until she gets a striker alt. As consolation, we do get an after-battle animation with the both of them. What a moving friendship. It's a shame you'll probably never use them together in a battle since Kirara sandbagged her kit. Must be so she can go home. True to the go home, Twinkle Twinkle Club. Erika, on the other hand, isn't quite so eager to sit out the battle. She has made her bid at becoming meta in a modest way. Her kit has some nuance, but overall it's not too complicated. It's a 3-cost EX skill featuring a heal, a 3-for-1 cleanse, and keychains. We'll talk about those in order. The heal is single target and does 45,000 at UE40. That's not super high for single target when the benchmark Idle Mari generally sets the bar at about 60k. It's rather close to the Hieronymus Torment Green Lantern's health, which is 44,000, so I'm inclined to think that's the benchmark they balanced it around. If they bump up the healing amount required again in Lunatic, she might lose her ability to one-shot the Lantern and in turn some versatility. This falls under reserving the right to sell later, similar to making Casual Senna, who is tailored for making Lunatic Kurokage vastly easier. In other places demanding healing, I also want to note that she's not outstanding for Gebra. She doesn't have enough healing fully maxed even to overheat at the start, which is about 50k, and the rest of her kit doesn't have much use since Gebra doesn't debuff, not to mention the crit buff from her normal only applying to strikers. Moving on to the debuff cleansing. She occupies new territory, being the first student able to cleanse 3 debuffs on a single target in a single cast every time. Armed Toki technically can remove 3 debuffs at once too, but that's only after 80 seconds to get the 2 charges that increase her debuff removal, so Erika is miles ahead in terms of reliability. So great, she has the niche of 3 debuffs removed at once. The problem is, no bosses we have information for currently give you 3 debuffs at once, so this is for the future if anything at all. We'll talk about that later. For the existing bosses, it would mainly be Peroro and Hieronymus. Peroro is pretty straightforward. Your tank would get a heal, and you could cleanse the debuff that melts their armor and pops the backline. It should be a reasonably good, though probably not top tier solution, since you can't stack keychains for the basic skill buff efficiently when you're only removing 1 debuff per cast. As for Hieronymus, some people had the hope that this would revolutionize Lantern brute forcing. If you could cleanse the debuff key point before healing the Lantern, you could effectively spam Erika on the Lantern constantly and get it maxed out in a heartbeat. The order is unfortunately heal and then cleanse, so there's none of that. The debuff also applies after it's done floating and untargetable, so no cleansing the debuff right as it comes either. The order benefits using it to dispel the curse bomb though. The curse is usually dispelled with healing, but you need to top off someone to heal it away. If you cleanse before healing, the healing would be weaker since the target of the EX skill would lose the curse's healing buff before receiving the heal. And finally, the part that makes her rather niche. For each debuff you remove, you get 1 keychain stack. Emphasis on not the number of times cast, but the number of debuffs removed. Remove 3 debuffs to get 3 keychains, and you'll get a buff off her normal skill for a reasonably good 25.6% crit damage buff. This is for strikers only. Sounds reasonably good until you circle back to there being no 3 debuff use cases in the current raids. You could achieve it in multiple rounds of healing, but the cost of her EX and the middle of the road buff values aren't especially appealing to use it like this. It seems to imply using her specifically for something that would simultaneously cleanse 3 debuffs and give you the buff. Next up is the passive. Her passive is healing, and when enhanced, more healing. Yay. Without at least UE40, she won't reach the Torment Hieronymus threshold, so if you wanted to somewhat inadvisably use her for that, you'd need to pony up some Eligma. And finally, her subskill. It's been noted that her subskill's 25% crit damage buff is on the high end for a subskill. Nagisa's sub is considered high at 24%, and it's only given to explosive students, whereas something more universal like Hot Spring Shigure's sub is the average. There is one restriction though. Dealers only, so that's meant to exclude someone. But who? The DPS tactical supports? With that, we've gone over all the skills. So let's synthesize this. Erika wants to heal a single target. She wants to remove 3 debuffs from them so she can get 3 keychains in 1 cast. And in doing so, she wants to give a crit damage buff to a striker dealer ally. Nothing so far aligns these stars, and we don't have the information about Drum Barca yet to know if he needs exactly all that either. As much as the timing would suggest that he does fulfill most of them at least. We'll have to do our best tackling the important question with the information we have on hand. Should you pull? If you're running no expensive spared comps, there's a good chance she'll be used in some form. She seems to have superior roll compression and being very specialized for Drum Barca. No further comment as Ultra Bald isn't my lane. From a pleb plat perspective, I don't think she'll be necessary. I do think it has a good chance of being a filtering point for the higher difficulties or faster clears. But I don't get the feeling enough people will have pulled Erika, or all the recent related permanent units to squeeze the average pleb plat sensei running meta comps out of plat. It should still be achievable with a bit of effort in the lower ring arena. Newbie senseis should probably save their pyro for someone more versatile. But who am I to stop you if you just really like crabs or leopard print? Regardless of whether she's good or not, there's a satisfying closure to have every student teased in the promotional video finally playable. Because we can't steepen our nostalgia forever. The game must go on. And so must come new things to anticipate, like the wave function collapse of the size of this Odyssey girl. or the release of the new Prez look not alike. With all the promises of Promotional Video 1 fulfilled at long last, this small indie game can truly close the door on its first act. Arguably, it's past its peak if you judge that according to raid participation numbers, but I still feel like there are interesting students to release and captivating stories to tell. I at least personally plan to be here to witness the revival of the Abydos Sound Festival. Anyways, that's it for this time. Comments as always are appreciated. Thanks for watching.